How long will $1 million last you in retirement? That might be the question on your mind, and that's the question we're going to address here today as we evaluate Bob and Sue's situation as we do a client case study. Bob and Sue are 59 and 60 years old, and they want to retire today, and they're wondering, how long will our $1 million that we've worked hard for and saved over our careers, how long will that last, and what are the things that we can do to improve our situation? So we're going to evaluate if they should take Social Security a little bit earlier, should they change their overall portfolio allocations and take on more or less risk? Are they able to increase their spending every single month or take an extra vacation here and there? That's what we're going to look at today. And as someone who's built hundreds of retirement plans for people just like you, I know what it takes to have a sustainable plan to move forward so that you enjoy life rather than worry about money throughout retirement. So let's go ahead and look at their situation and see what we can do. All right, so right here we've got Bob and Sue. You can see that Bob is 60 years old, Sue is 59, and they have just retired. They've got two kiddos, James and Samantha. They are both on their own and doing well. Let's take a look at their overall net worth and where things are. So they've got about $50,000 there in cash at the bank. They have about $1 million or so in investments. Most of that is in Bob's IRA, and then Sue has a smaller IRA of $300,000. And you can see that all of this money is tax deferred. So right now they don't have any Roth money, they don't have any brokerage account money, and so we can evaluate that in just a second. I might give a couple tips or pointers there for you towards the end of the video, so stay tuned for that. In addition to that, they have a home worth $500,000 that is completely paid off, and they live in Florida. So what are the things that they're trying to do? Right now, they want to keep it really simple and really basic and say, Jacob, here are the things that we have to have every month, and here's how much we plan to spend. Let's just start with that and then go from there. So they want to spend about $5,000 every single month as their discretionary spending. That takes care of all their bills, their taxes, everything like that. And then in addition to that, they've also got healthcare costs. Since they are before 65, they've got to think about their private health insurance. And so what we've done here is we've assumed that they are healthy, which they are, and so we don't expect any major medical things to pop up. So they're going to find some plans that cost about $5,000 per year each. Maybe they have some subsidy opportunities there through the Affordable Care Act based on their income, and so we'll look and see if they can find ways to reduce their income overall. But in addition to that, we want to have Medicare Part B, Part D, and then down here at the bottom, you can see once they are at 65 or older, this out-of-pocket, that is for their Medicare supplement plans. So that's on top of the $5,000 per month that they are spending. And in terms of their income, they don't have any earned income because they retired at the beginning of this year. And their Social Security, which is not turned on yet, obviously, because they're not 62. Right now, the plan is to take that at 67 for both of them. Bob's benefit at 67 will be $3,200, as you can see right there. Sue's would be $2,400. So combined, that would make up a pretty good percentage of their overall fixed income needs that they would have. Now, let's take a look at their situation and see what this current base plan looks like, and then we'll make some changes and adjustments to see what else they can do. So right here, we can see a 93% chance of success, which means by the end of life, and have both of them living to age 90, they would have 7% chance of running out of money. If you've watched any videos of mine before, you know that this is really good. I'd rather actually maybe be in the 80% chance if we want to look at this correctly, because the key here is I don't want you to have a 100% chance of success so that you never run out of money, because that means we're probably not spending enough. We're probably not enjoying life as much as we otherwise could. And so I'd rather kind of be in this like 80 to 90% range and know that there is some variability to spending. Right now, we can see that at the end of life, they would have about $600,000 as the median ending portfolio, and 93% of chance of success is what that would look like. Now, what I want to look at really fast here is these retirement details, and I want to see what is their withdrawal rate from their portfolio based on how this is structured right now. So you can look at a few different things. You can see that they actually have a really high withdrawal rate here in the first few years of retirement until they get to Social Security age, which it drops down dramatically because their Social Security would make up a large chunk of their income needs every single month at this point. In addition to that, you can also see here in 2040, they will have RMDs that would kick in, which would increase their withdrawal rate, but it's still not outrageous. So this brings up a point that I want to emphasize here. Whenever you think about withdrawal rates in retirement, we've all heard of the 4% rule, or we've heard of some sort of percentage distribution rule where you can take X amount out every single year for the rest of your life for 30 years and you'll never run out of money. Well, the hard part with that is what happens whenever you retire at 60 and your distribution rate in Bob and Sue's situation is 6.81%. That might seem scary right out of the gate, right? Because it's not 4% and you've heard 4% is sustainable. The hard part with this is that you can see they're not going to have that high withdrawal rate forever. They're only going to have that for a fixed number of years, and about about 5 or 6 years is how long that would take. In fact, if their spending goes up with inflation over time, you can see that their withdrawal rate is actually increasing over time as a percentage as well. And that's also assuming their portfolios may be going down because they are taking money from it. So you can see that potentially in 2031, they could have a 9.5% or more distribution or withdrawal rate based on how much money they have at that point, but also how much they would need to cover their expenses. Now, you can see immediately that drops off as soon as their Social Security starts to kick in. So it drops down to about 1% or so as a distribution rate. So should this higher distribution rate scare them off from retirement? Does it make their retirement unsustainable? The answer is no. In fact, if you retire before Social Security or when you decide to take that fixed income, you will have a higher distribution rate than you otherwise should. So I want you to not focus on the actual distribution rate. I want you to look at what it is and for how long. What's the duration of that distribution rate? And so don't be scared of a higher distribution rate than 4%. That's the first thing I want to tell you today, because what you can see is that their average distribution rate over their lifetime is right on par. In fact, it's less than 4% most likely. If we added all these up and divided it by the number of years, we can see that their distribution rate is not too high. Now, what you have to pay attention to during these first 6 years, if you do have this higher distribution rate, is something called sequence of return risk. This is a risk that comes in play for most retirees as they evaluate where to pull money from and how much they can pull from their accounts. So if we get an immediate 30% drawdown in the markets and your account values are down 30%, then you could have an even higher distribution rate. And if I wanted to model this out, I can say, well, what if we had a bad first 2 years of retirement, right? We can see that our withdrawal rate is 8.4%, and then it actually goes above 10% because we lost, let's call it 20+% of their account values in those first couple of years. So their withdrawal rate is actually going up, and then it continues to go up because they have a smaller and smaller account balance. So what would have to happen during this particular period of time to make their retirement plan more sustainable? They'd probably have to cut back on the amount of money they're spending. So no extracurriculars, maybe no vacations, cut anything where they can, try to eat at home as much as possible, especially during those tough first 2 years if this example happens. But we have to think about how much risk your portfolio is taking on, whether you should have more fixed income or cash on the sidelines, or how much stock you should have. What's your risk in the short term and then also in the long term? And the way I like to do this is build out a 3-bucket portfolio. So I want to have at least 2 years of living expenses in cash ready to go should this event, like we were talking about here, a bad first 2 years of retirement, should that happen, we've got cash to pull from and we can let our stocks recover if those have been hit and gone down in value. Now, the second bucket is I want 3 years of living expense needs in fixed income. That could be U.S. Treasuries, that could be CDs, that could be corporate bonds. Really, I want this to be something that has a higher potential yield compared to cash, but also is not volatile like a stock or stock fund might be. And then finally, that third bucket is anything that you would need from an expense standpoint 5 years from now or later. And so what we're doing here is we're building out 3 different buckets based on when we need certain types or amounts of money. So if we need $5,000 a month, that's $60,000 per year, right? So we need to have at least $120,000 out of their $1 million in cash on the sidelines in a money market, not going up and down with the market. We need to have at least about $180,000 in fixed income, such as treasuries, CDs, corporate bonds, something like that, so that those, yes, they have some volatility and there is some risk associated with them. They are not risk-free as a whole, as a subset in fixed income, but we want to make sure that it's not in the stock market. So what that does is builds out that 5-year buffer so that you withstand market volatility and short-term declines, maybe like we're going through here in the first part of 2025. So that's a quick thing to think about there. Now, what happens if we do this? I want to change their spending cycle. So right now, everything is set to say that they're going to have an increase in spending every single year for the rest of their life based on inflation. Now, as someone who's done retirement planning and works with people in their 90s, I know that this is not accurate. I know that people do not spend more every single year. In fact, most of the time, people spend less throughout retirement compared to the year before. So think about maybe the first 10 years as kind of like your go-go years. You're spending as much money as you can because you have the health to go and enjoy, you have the financial situation to go and enjoy life. And then as you get older, your energy or your health, it might start going down so that you don't have the opportunity or the desire to go spend or go travel or whatever it might be that you've been doing previously. So your spending will be going down most likely over time. So what we can do is we can look at this in a couple of ways. We can look at the retirement spending smile, which says that you'll spend more in the first stages of retirement, you'll spend less in the middle, and then maybe a little bit more on the back end because of health concerns or long-term care costs. But what you can see is that the withdrawal rate in this situation, based on that higher spending on the front end, okay, you would have a higher withdrawal rate, but then it goes down even more on the back end. So it doesn't accelerate to the high side on the back end as bad. Now, if we put this back to a baseline kind of expected returns, we can see that this is totally fine. We're in the good ranges. Obviously, on the front end, we have high distribution rates. Now, what happens if this? What happens if we have that bad first couple of years that we talked about just a moment ago? If we come back here, we can change this now to the guardrails approach, which is more of a dynamic spending approach. And what this does is it limits how much we spend based on our portfolio or the performance of our accounts, or it increases it based on how well our accounts are performing. So the idea here is if you make more money in your portfolio, you can spend more, and when you make less or markets are going down, you can spend less, or you have to spend less. And so what you can see is this doesn't accelerate as quickly as the other ones in terms of the distribution rate. In fact, it drops all the way off in this situation because there's an upper guardrail in terms of how much you can spend and a lower guardrail. On the back end, though, obviously it goes up more. You've got different things here because hopefully by this point your portfolio is recovered and you're not spending so much money, so you can be withdrawing a higher percentage based on that market growth. So there's a few different ways you want to think about how you structure your portfolio and how you structure your distributions from the portfolio so that it is sustainable. Now, what I want to look at really fast is I want to go back to the probabilities page, and I want to see what happens if we actually increase their spending just a little bit. And real quick before I do that, you can see when I change the retirement spending from inflation adjusted, which is what this is showing, to a guardrails approach, what it does is this. It actually optimizes things perfectly. So you can see we increase our probability of success to 100%, although our ending portfolio value is less than it was before. Now, Jacob, why would I want to have less money at the end of life? Well, because you want to spend that and enjoy it while you can, unless you have a specific goal to leave a kid or grandkid some of your assets. You can set that money aside and have that growing in a particular bucket for that particular reason. But this is optimal. We want to make sure we can retire and stay retired, but also we don't want to die with $5 million either. We want to spend as much as we can and enjoy it while we can. And so this guardrails approach, that spending strategy, is actually going to be more optimized than just a normal inflation adjusted spending approach that most retirement, I guess, advisors or systems actually base retirement plans on. Now, if we do this, let's see if we can actually spend our higher amount of money every single month. So I'm going to bump this to $7,500. That's a pretty good jump from $5,000 up to $7,500. If we do this, we can obviously see that our chances are going to go down and we pretty much end with no money. Now, if I put this back to inflation adjusted, it's definitely going to be bad. So if we look at that there, it's going to be pretty much zero. Yep, 3%, no money left over. Now, if we change this to the retirement spending smile, right, which is again another type of spending cycle throughout retirement, not so good. That guardrails approach, spending what we can when we have the opportunity to, is going to be the best approach, it looks like. And if we do this, what we can say is instead of maybe $7,500, what if we did $6,000? So we increase their monthly spending by $1,000 a month, and you can think of that in a few different ways. You can think we're actually going to spend that monthly, or we're going to be going on an extra vacation per year, and it's going to be $12,000 for the vacation. Either way, you can spend about $12,000 more per year. In this scenario, again, we're optimizing how much we have at the end of life. So this kind of like die with zero mentality. We're using what we can that we've saved and worked hard for. The overall balance at the end of life is going down, although our chance of success is still really good. So if we look at this confidence chart here, we can see that the range of outcomes here, we're not running out of money, right? And this dark blue vein, that's that median dollar amount. So you can see it goes down pretty quickly here in the first few years. This is until we get to Social Security age, where it kind of flattens out and your distributions actually are pretty much zero at this point. So you're actually gaining portfolio value. And then once RMDs kick in, it starts going down again because you have to distribute a certain amount out every single year. And what I'm trying to tell you is you probably want to spend more than you otherwise think. You just have to do it in a thoughtful manner. So at the end of this situation, situation, the proposed plan, which means spend an extra $1,000 a month and use the guardrails approach, you would have less money at the end of life, but perhaps you would have a more fulfilling life that you've lived, because again, no one wants to die with a lot of money in most situations. Now, another thing that I want to look at here is their Social Security strategy. Right now, they're going to be taking their Social Security at 67, which is both of their full retirement ages. And so instead of doing that, what if we took both of theirs as early as possible? So that's only 2 years down the road when they turn 62. And let's see what happens here. So if we come back and we look at the probabilities, let's go here, we'll hit refresh. We can see that the chances of success go down whenever we flipped over their Social Security to being at 62 instead of 67. Why would that be? The reason is because they're reducing how much they get from Social Security by 30 or so percent, which means they have to take a larger amount of money out of their portfolio. So they're relying as a percentage of their portfolio. They're relying on a higher amount every single month to live on, rather than having a higher fixed income for longer. Now, obviously, this assumes that they both live to 90. So if Bob lives to 75, it could change this just a little bit. Let's see. And it might make it, yeah. So if Bob were to die at 75, he might want to take it a little bit sooner, and Sue might want to as well, even if she lives to 90. So in that situation, we can get the fixed income started a little bit earlier, and they still don't jeopardize their retirement. If we look at the optimal strategy here, we can see that Sue would actually want to take hers at 63, and Bob would delay his all the way to 70. And maybe the reason for that is maybe a split type approach, where the person who has the lower benefits would actually take theirs as soon as possible. So not quite as soon as possible, but Sue in this situation, she would be 63. But if Bob delays his to 70, he gets an extra 8% a year increase on his benefit amount. So should he pass away earlier than Sue, she would then get his benefits rather than her own. So her benefits would technically increase on a per person basis based on that survivor benefit there if he does pass away. Now, that's based on, I think, both of them living to 90. And then if we look at their cash flow situation, we can see what their cash flows look like based on the current plan. So obviously you can see no income flows for these years. That's why their distribution rate is so high during this period of time. Once they both have Social Security turned on, most of their expense needs are met. You can see there's just a little bit left over. And also something that's really important to notice as well is their tax payment goes down to nearly zero, because Social Security, if it's the primary source of your income or all of your income in retirement, you're gonna pay no tax on that Social Security. They have a little bit of overflow because of how much they would have to pull from their tax deferred sources out of their IRAs. But the key is their tax rate drops off dramatically. Now you can see it jump back up again because of RMDs here at 75. So they might want to look at that and see if there's anything they can do to maybe do some tax planning. And so we can see maybe here, if we look at this, we can see, hey, we're spending money out of our IRAs, and our Social Security goes down to zero, or our taxes go down to zero because of Social Security, and then it jumps back again. And so if we go to tax strategies, I'm curious if there's a benefit of doing a Roth conversion. Let's kind of build this out really fast and see. So right now you can see no changes have been made. Let's just fill up the 12% bracket as it stands today. We can see some benefits there. If we go to calibration, we can see they would convert just a little bit here early on, all the way up to that 12% bracket, and we can look at the actual details of that and see, hey, a conversion amount of 44,000, 30,000, 30,000, 30, until they get to Social Security age, and they would actually be able to keep doing those until they get all the way to RMD age. So you can see what happened here is this. Their tax-free balance, it's zero right now because they don't have any Roth money. But as soon as they start doing these conversions, they would have money invested there. And so they get $44,295 going in year one. You see that. And then it increases every year, but now it's also compounding and growing completely tax-free. So by the time they get to 75, it's possible that they could have upwards of $1 million all tax deferred if they did this strategy, in addition to how much they're having to spend out of the account. So they're spending 125 minus 44, whatever that is, about $80,000 or so. They're spending that from their IRA. So their tax deferred account balance, you can see, is going down pretty quickly because of how much they're spending from the account, but then also the Roth conversions. And so by the end of being actually age 73, before they go to RMD age, they have no tax deferred account balance. Now, is that the most optimal thing? Maybe not. I would probably say to leave a little bit, a couple $100,000 or so dollars in tax deferred. And the reason for that is if your only source of income is Social Security, you're paying no taxes on that. And what you can do is there's about $20,000 to $40,000 of room there that you can potentially have have taxable income completely tax-free because of how the tax bracket works, how Social Security income taxation is calculated, and then also that standard deduction, assuming that it stays really high like it is right now. So do they want to convert everything down to zero in their tax deferred? The answer is no. I could maybe do a video on that at some point in the future, but if they did it this way, they would have no money in tax deferred, have over $1 million tax-free, free and clear for them, for their kids, grandkids down the road, and they still have a little bit of cash left over as well. Now, if we come back, what that does is that actually leaves them with this much money more at the end of life, but also that's tax savings as well. Now, one thing I do want to focus on always in every client situation is going to be their asset location. So where are the equities held? Right now, they only have tax deferred account balances being their IRAs, but as soon as they did a Roth conversion strategy, they would have the opportunity to invest all their equities in Roth with some equities left over in their tax deferred accounts. So it's an asset location. I've done videos on this, but if we have our equities in our tax-free account being the Roth first, that's where we fill that up first, and then everything left over goes into these other ones, then we would do it that way. And here's the thing, that's going to be another $100,000 of tax savings over their lifetime, okay? So it's something to pay attention to for sure. Asset location, it's an easy win for everyone out there to be able to do that and save money on taxes. So as we've gone through this, hopefully it sparks some ideas in your mind and actually helps you create new ways or things to think about around your retirement plan and what you can do to improve it. And here's what I want you to do. If you would, leave a comment down below letting me know what you want to see in future videos like this one, but also share what you're doing in your retirement plan. I want to hear what strategies you're implementing because other people who read the comments can learn from that as well. Thanks so much for tuning in. We will see you in the next video.